The $40,000 bottle of wine was falling in slow motion, and Emily Carter knew her life was about to shatter with it. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was watching Damien Cross, her manager, her tormentor, smile as he'd shoved her from behind. The worst part was seeing the billionaire Adrian Cole's eyes narrow at her clumsiness. His business deal worth millions about to collapse because she couldn't keep her hands steady. The worst part was knowing she'd never afford her grandmother's medication now. But then Emily's fingers closed around the bottle's neck, and everything changed. Everything. If you want to see how a single moment can rewrite someone's entire future, stay with me until the end. And drop a comment with your city. I want to know how far this story travels. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Velvet Crown like it had a personal grudge against the glass. Emily Carter barely noticed. She'd stopped noticing things like weather 6 months ago, right around the time her grandmother's doctor had used the word terminal in a sentence that also contained expensive and experimental treatment. Table 12 needs water. Are you deaf, Emily? Sandra's voice cut through the ambient noise of clinking silverware and murmured conversations. Sandra Chen, senior waitress, professional backstabber, and Emily's least favorite person in a restaurant full of people she didn't particularly like. I'm going. Emily grabbed the crystal pitcher, ignoring how Sandra's perfectly manicured nails drummed against the marble countertop. You're always going. Never there when it matters. Sandra examined her reflection in a serving spoon, adjusting a strand of glossy black hair. Damien's looking for you, by the way, and he doesn't look happy. When did Damien Cross ever look happy? The restaurant's manager had exactly 2 facial expressions, vaguely irritated and actively hostile. Emily had learned to navigate both with her head down and her mouth shut. The Velvet Crown occupied the entire ground floor of a converted Victorian mansion in Mayfair. Chandeliers dripped from 20-foot ceilings. The carpet probably cost more than Emily's annual salary. Rich people came here to be seen eating food they'd photograph but barely touch. Emily hated every square inch of it. Carter, Damien's bark made her flinch. She turned to find him striding toward her, his thin face pinched with panic barely concealed behind his usual sneer. At 38, Damien had the look of a man who'd spent his entire life angry that he wasn't more important than he was. Yes, Mr. Cross. We have a situation. He grabbed her elbow, fingers digging in hard enough to leave marks. Mr. Adrian Cole just walked through that door. Emily glanced toward the entrance. Through the frosted glass partition, she could make out a tall figure shaking rain from an expensive-looking coat. I don't... Of course you don't. You don't know anything useful, do you? Damien's breath smelled like coffee and contempt. Adrian Cole, billionaire, single father, controls half the real estate development in London. He's here for the Patterson deal, worth £8 million, and if anything goes wrong tonight, I will personally make sure you never work in this city again. I understand. Do you? Damien's eyes narrowed. Because right now, Marcus just informed me that Mr. Cole specifically requested a Mandarin menu, which we don't have. And Marco, the head chef, doesn't speak anything but Italian and barely intelligible English. And the Patterson group is already seated, already drinking our most expensive champagne, and if Cole walks out before appetizers, this entire evening goes straight to hell. Emily's mind raced. What about nothing? You keep your head down, you stay out of sight, and you let the senior staff handle this. Am I clear? Crystal. But Damien was already gone, barking orders at Marcus near the host stand. Emily set down the water pitcher and pressed her palm against the cool wall, taking 3 deep breaths like her grandmother had taught her when the world felt too heavy. In through the nose, Emily. Out through the mouth. The moment always passes. Except the moments weren't passing anymore. They were piling up, one after another, burying her under their weight. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. She knew without looking it was another message from Oakwood Care Home, another reminder that this month's payment was overdue, another polite suggestion that perhaps Emily should explore alternative arrangements for her grandmother's care. Alternative arrangements. Like that was a real option. Like there was somewhere else May Carter could go, somewhere that would actually give a damn about a 78-year-old Chinese woman with advanced dementia and a granddaughter who could barely keep her own head above water. Emily, table 7 wants their check. Sandra appeared beside her, smiling that smile that never reached her eyes. Unless you're too busy standing around. I'm getting it. Sure you are. Emily counted to 10 in Mandarin, her grandmother's trick for not saying something you'd regret. Yi, san, si, wu. The dining room had filled up while she'd been lost in her own head. Every table occupied, every seat filled with people who'd never worried about a medical bill in their lives. Women in jewelry that cost more than Emily's rent. Men in watches that could have paid for her grandmother's treatment 3 times over. And then she saw him. Adrian Cole sat alone at table 1, the prime position, the power seat, the table reserved for people who made other people nervous just by existing. He wasn't looking at his phone, wasn't making small talk with the hovering servers, just sitting there with the absolute stillness of someone who knew exactly how much space he occupied in any room. He was younger than Emily expected, early 30s maybe, sharp jaw, dark hair cut precisely, eyes that seemed to take in everything without appearing to look at anything specific. He wore his suit the way other men wore skin, like it was just part of him, nothing special, certainly nothing to comment on. Damien practically genuflected as he approached the table. Emily watched from across the room as her manager transformed into some weird parody of himself. All desperate smiles and excessive hand gestures. Whatever Damien was saying, Adrian Cole clearly wasn't impressed. The billionaire's expression never changed. He simply stood up. Oh no. Marcus appeared beside Emily, wringing his hands. Oh no, he's leaving. Maybe he's leaving and Damien looks like he's about to have a stroke. Marcus grabbed Emily's arm. This is bad. This is really bad. The Patterson group is watching everything. If Cole walks out, they walk out, and the whole deal collapses. Emily watched Adrian Cole button his suit jacket with methodical precision, watched him nod once at Damien, a gesture of dismissal so subtle and devastating that her manager actually took a step backward. What do we do? Marcus whispered. Emily didn't have an answer. She barely had answers for her own life, let alone whatever corporate drama was unfolding across the dining room. But then Adrian Cole turned slightly, and Emily saw his face properly for the first time. And something in her chest did this weird, uncomfortable flip. It wasn't that he was handsome, though he was, in that specific way that came from good genetics and expensive maintenance. It was something else. Something in the set of his shoulders, the way he held himself apart from everyone else in the room. He looked lonely. Deeply, profoundly lonely, in a way that had nothing to do with being physically alone and everything to do with being emotionally unreachable. Emily knew that look, wore it herself most days. Someone needs to do something, Marcus hissed. The words left Emily's mouth before her brain caught up with her tongue. Yan Sheng Qing Shao Jiang. Sir, please wait a moment. The Mandarin felt rusty on her tongue. She hadn't spoken it regularly since her grandmother's mind started slipping away. But it came out clear enough. Adrian Cole stopped walking, turned, looked directly at Emily for the first time, and the entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Later, Emily would try to remember exactly what she'd been thinking in that moment. But the truth was, she hadn't been thinking at all. She'd just been moving, crossing the dining room with her heart hammering against her ribs, aware of every eye tracking her progress. Damien's face had gone an interesting shade of purple. Sandra looked like she'd swallowed something poisonous, and Adrian Cole just watched her approach with those dark, unreadable eyes. Ni hui shuo zhongwen. You speak Chinese? His Mandarin was flawless, Beijing accent educated, the kind that came from expensive tutors and international schools. Wo nai nai jiao wo de. My grandmother taught me. Emily's voice came out steadier than she felt. Wo ting shuo ni shuyao zhongwen xaidan. I heard you needed a Chinese menu. This restaurant doesn't have one. No, sir, but I know the menu. I can... She switched to English, aware of Damien's intense stare. I can help you order, if you'd like. Adrian Cole studied her for what felt like an hour, but was probably only seconds. His gaze moved from her face to her name tag to the worn edges of her sensible work shoes. You're a waitress. It wasn't a question, but Emily answered anyway. Yes, sir. And you speak Mandarin fluently enough to discuss food? My grandmother owned a noodle stall in Suzhou before she moved here. She taught me to cook and to speak properly while cooking. Emily had no idea why she was still talking. Food tastes better when you understand the language it was born in. Something flickered across Adrian Cole's face, too fast to read, gone before Emily could interpret it. Sit down. I'm sorry? Sit. He gestured to the chair across from him. Tell me what you'd recommend. Mr. Cole, I can't. Why not? Because Damien would fire her before dessert. Because Sandra would make her life even more miserable than it already was. Because waitresses didn't sit with billionaires at table 1 while the entire restaurant watched. But Adrian Cole was already pulling out the chair, and Emily found herself sitting before she'd consciously decided to move. Damien appeared at her elbow so fast he must have teleported. Mr. Cole, I sincerely apologize for this interruption. Emily, return to your duties immediately. She's helping me order. Adrian didn't look at Damien, kept his eyes on Emily. Unless you'd prefer I leave. The threat hung in the air like the smell of something burning. Damien's jaw worked soundlessly for a moment, then, Of course, sir. Take all the time you need. He shot Emily a look that promised retribution later, then retreated. You're going to get in trouble for this, Emily said quietly. You or me? Definitely me. Then we should make it worth the consequences. Adrian leaned back in his chair. Tell me about Suzhou. I've never been there. My grandmother left before I was born. But she taught you to cook. When I was young. Before... Emily stopped. Billionaires didn't want to hear about dementia and care homes and medication that cost more than rent. Yes, she taught me. What was her specialty? Emily thought about those hours in her grandmother's tiny kitchen, back when May's hands were still steady and her mind was still sharp. The smell of ginger and star anise. The sound of oil sizzling in the wok. Soup, she said finally. She made soup that could fix anything. Broken hearts, bad days, loneliness. She looked up, met Adrian's eyes. Hunger. Something in his expression shifted. Softened, maybe. Though it was hard to tell. Your menu doesn't have soup, he said. No, sir. Chef Marco specializes in modern European cuisine with molecular gastronomy elements. Foam. A lot of foam, yes. The corner of Adrian's mouth twitched. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was closer than Emily had seen from him yet. Tell me what you would make, he said. If this were your restaurant. If you could serve me anything. Emily should have demurred. Should have offered something from the actual menu. But sitting across from this lonely billionaire in his perfect suit, watching the rain streak down the windows behind him, she found herself being honest instead. Suzhou-style fish soup with pickled vegetables and wood ear mushrooms, but made with English ingredients. Dover sole instead of Mandarin fish. Local wild mushrooms instead of imported ones. The broth would be clear, not cloudy. Clean flavors. Nothing hidden. She paused. And hand-pulled noodles, because soup without noodles is just... sad. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Can your kitchen make that? I don't know. Chef Marco doesn't really do requests. He does if I'm paying for it. Adrian pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. I'm texting the Patterson group, telling them to order whatever they want. Dinner's on me tonight. Sir, you don't have to... I want that soup. He looked at her directly. Can you make it happen? Emily thought about her grandmother's recipes, locked away in her memory. Thought about Chef Marco's ego and Damien's rage and Sandra's inevitable sabotage. Yes, she said, I can make it happen. Then do it. He said it like it was simple. Like the world would just rearrange itself because he decided it should. And maybe, for Adrian Cole, it did. Emily stood up, aware of every eye in the restaurant tracking her movement. She could feel the weight of their judgment, their confusion, their envy. The invisible waitress was suddenly very visible, and it made her skin itch. I'll bring you tea while you wait, she said. Emily, she turned back. What's your last name? Carter. Adrian nodded slowly like he was filing that information away somewhere important. Thank you, Emily Carter. The kitchen was exactly the disaster she'd expected. Chef Marco stood in the center of his domain like a temperamental emperor, waving a wooden spoon and shouting in Italian-accented English. No, no, no! I am not a noodle cook. This is not a dumpling house. We do not make soup like peasants. The customer specifically requested, Damien started. I don't care what he requested. I am an artist. I create experiences, not... Marco gestured violently at the ingredients Emily had assembled. Whatever this is an 8 million pound deal that depends on you making soup. Damien's voice had gone dangerously quiet.
So you're going to make the damn soup, Marco, and it's going to be the best soup anyone's ever tasted. I refuse. Then you're fired. The kitchen went silent.
Marco stared at Damien, his face cycling through several shades of red. You cannot fire me. Your contract has a clause about insubordination. Read the fine print. Damien turned to Emily. You know how to make this soup? Emily's mouth went dry. I've never made it in a professional kitchen before. That's not what I asked. Behind Damien, Sandra leaned against the prep counter with her arms crossed, watching with undisguised glee. This was going to be a spectacular failure, and she had front row seats. Yes, Emily said, I know how to make it. Then make it. Damien pointed at Marco. You're going to help her, and if this goes wrong, you're both finished. Understood? Emily barely heard him agree. Her mind was already racing through the recipe, adapting it for ingredients she had available, timing everything in her head. Okay, Nine-Eye, she thought. If you're watching, now would be a good time to help. The next 40 minutes were controlled chaos. Marco sulked and complained, but ultimately followed Emily's instructions, partly because his job depended on it, partly because even his ego couldn't deny that she knew what she was doing. Emily moved through the kitchen with muscle memory she didn't know she still possessed. Her hands remembered how to clean fish, how to julienne ginger into hair-thin strips, how to time everything so the noodles would hit the broth at exactly the right moment. Sandra appeared at her elbow. Need any help? Her voice dripped with false sweetness. I'm fine. Are you sure? It's a lot of pressure, cooking for a billionaire. Sandra picked up the bottle of rice wine vinegar Emily had been using. It would be such a shame if something went wrong. Emily looked at her directly. Put that down. Or what? Or I'll tell Damien you're interfering with the order he specifically told me to complete. Sandra's smile faltered. She set down the bottle with exaggerated care. Just trying to help. Help somewhere else. The fish stock was simmering perfectly, filling the kitchen with delicate fragrance. Emily added the wood ear mushrooms, watched them bloom in the hot liquid, tasted the broth with a clean spoon. Something was missing. She closed her eyes, reached back through memory to her grandmother's kitchen. What was it? What made Nine-Eye's soup special? White pepper, just a touch, and a drop of sesame oil at the very end. Emily's eyes snapped open. She grabbed the white pepper, added the tiniest pinch, tasted again. There it was. Noodles now, she told Marco. They need to be served immediately after pulling. Marco actually looked impressed despite himself. You know what you're doing. My grandmother was a good teacher. The noodles stretched between her hands like silk, elastic and perfect. She'd forgotten how satisfying this was. The rhythm, the technique, the way the dough yielded to pressure but maintained its integrity. Those are beautiful. Marcus had appeared beside her, watching with open admiration. Where did you learn to pull noodles like that? Practice. Emily dropped the noodles into boiling water. Lots and lots of practice. The soup came together like a small miracle. Clear broth with barely any oil floating on top, noodles arranged in a perfect nest, Dover sole cooked so precisely it was almost translucent, pickled vegetables providing tiny bursts of acid to cut the richness. Emily placed everything in one of the restaurant's simplest white bowls. No foam, no microgreens, no edible flowers or gold leaf or any of the nonsense Marco usually insisted on. Just soup. It's too simple, Sandra said from behind her. He'll think you're insulting him. Emily ignored her, picked up the bowl with steady hands. Damien materialized in front of her before she could leave the kitchen. If this is a disaster, it won't be. You sound confident. I'm terrified. Emily met his eyes. But the soup is good. I know it's good. Damien stepped aside. The dining room had somehow gotten even quieter during her absence. Emily felt every eye on her as she carried the bowl toward table 1, careful not to spill a single drop. Adrian Cole was reading something on his phone, but looked up as she approached. Your soup, sir? She set it down in front of him. Adrian stared at the bowl for a long moment without speaking. Steam rose from the broth in delicate spirals. The noodles lay in their nest like something precious. It looks... Emily held her breath. Simple. Her heart sank. But then Adrian picked up his spoon and chopsticks, and Emily saw his hands were shaking. Just slightly. Barely noticeable unless you were looking for it.
He lifted the noodles first, examining them with unexpected intensity. Then he tasted the broth and went absolutely still. Emily counted her own heartbeats. 5, 10, 15. Adrian set down his spoon very carefully, looked up at Emily with an expression she couldn't read.
Where exactly did your grandmother have her stall?
His voice came out rough.
In Suzhou. Near the gardens. She said the tourists would come for the scenery and stay for the food. When? She left China in 1985, so before that. Adrian's face had gone pale. What was her name? Your grandmother? May Carter. Well, May Liu originally, but she took my grandfather's name when she married.
Mei Liu? Adrian repeated the name like it meant something, like it hurt to say it out loud. Small woman, always smiling, had a scar on her left hand from a burn. Emily's breath caught. Yes. How did you... I knew her. Adrian was still staring at the soup. A long time ago, when I was very young.
That's impossible. She left China before you were born. I was born in Suzhou. He looked up at her. In the slums near the gardens. I lived on the streets until I was 8 years old. The restaurant could have been empty for all Emily was aware of it. There was just this moment, this table, this impossible connection. There was a woman who ran a noodle stall, Adrian continued quietly. She fed me. Every day for almost 3 years. Never asked for money, never asked my name, just fed me. His hand was still trembling slightly around the spoon. She kept me alive when no one else gave a damn whether I lived or died. Emily couldn't breathe. This soup, Adrian said, it tastes exactly like hers. Exactly. I used her recipe. I know. He picked up the chopsticks again, ate some noodles with the focused intensity of someone trying to hold on to something that was slipping away. I know. Emily should have left him alone, should have retreated to the kitchen and let him eat in peace. Instead, she heard herself ask, what happened? After she left? I got lucky. An English businessman saw me pick a pocket in the market. Instead of calling the police, he took me home, fed me, taught me, eventually adopted me. Adrian's laugh was bitter. Cole isn't my birth name. I don't remember what that was. I was just street kid until someone decided I was worth saving. My grandmother saved you. She did. Adrian took another taste of soup. And I never got to thank her. You can thank her now. She's still alive. The words hung between them. Adrian set down his spoon very carefully. Where? Oakwood Care Home, about 15 miles outside the city. Emily's throat was tight. She has dementia. Most days she doesn't remember me. But sometimes she talks about Suzhou, about the gardens and the tourists and the hungry little boy who used to steal oranges from the fruit vendor but never stole from her. Adrian closed his eyes briefly. I remember those oranges. She protected you. The fruit vendor wanted to call the police, but she convinced him you were just a boy who needed kindness more than punishment. Emily. She looked at him. After I'm done eating, Adrian said quietly, I'd like to visit your grandmother, if that's possible. Tonight? Tonight. Emily nodded, not trusting her voice. But first, Adrian picked up his spoon again. I need to finish this soup. It would be disrespectful not to. He ate slowly, methodically, like each bite mattered. Emily watched him and understood that she was witnessing something intensely private, a powerful man confronting ghosts he'd thought were long buried. The Patterson group at the adjacent table had gone completely silent, watching this interaction with obvious confusion. And across the room, Damien's face was a study in barely suppressed rage. Emily didn't care. For the first time in months, maybe years, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Adrian finished the soup, even drank the remaining broth directly from the bowl, something no one in this restaurant probably ever did. When he was done, he set down the bowl and looked at Emily with something that might have been gratitude. Thank you. It's just soup. No. His voice was firm. It's not. Damien descended on them before Emily could respond. Mr. Cole, I trust everything was satisfactory? More than satisfactory. Adrian stood up, pulled out his wallet. What do I owe you? For you, sir, dinner is complimentary. I'm paying. Adrian dropped several 100-pound notes on the table. For my meal and for the Patterson group. And for Emily's time. That's really not... I insist. Adrian turned to Emily. When does your shift end? Midnight? I'll wait. And with that, he walked to a quiet corner table, pulled out his phone, and proceeded to ignore the entire restaurant. Damien grabbed Emily's arm the moment Adrian was out of earshot. His fingers dug in hard enough to bruise. My office. Now. The office was small and windowless and smelled like old coffee and Damien's expensive cologne. He shut the door behind them with ominous care. What, he said quietly, did you think you were doing out there? Following your orders. You told me to make the soup. I told you to make soup. Not to sit with a customer, not to have an intimate conversation in the middle of my dining room, not to make this restaurant look like some cheap noodle bar. He requested it. I don't care what he requested, Damien was shouting now. You're a waitress, the lowest level of staff. You don't sit with billionaires. You don't cook. You certainly don't make a spectacle of yourself. Emily's temper, usually kept on a tight leash, started to slip. I made him happy. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Make customers happy? You made him interested in you, and that's dangerous. Dangerous how? Damien's smile was cruel. You think this ends well for you? You think Adrian Cole sees you as anything more than a curiosity? A pet project? Tomorrow he'll forget you exist, and you'll still be here, still invisible, still barely scraping by. Each word was designed to hurt, and they did. Because part of Emily worried he was right. I need this job, she said quietly. I know. Damien leaned against his desk. Which is why you're going to stay away from Adrian Cole for the rest of the evening. Sandra will handle table 1. You'll work in the back, out of sight. He said he's waiting for me, when my shift ends. Then you'll tell him you can't go. Make up an excuse, I don't care what, but you will not leave this restaurant with him tonight. Am I understood? Emily thought about her grandmother, alone in that care home, thought about Adrian Cole, whose life had been saved by a woman who asked nothing in return. No, she heard herself say. Damien blinked. What? No, I'm going to finish my shift and then I'm going to take Mr. Cole to see my grandmother because that's what she would want, what she'd expect from me. Then you're fired. The words should have terrified her. Instead, Emily felt something strange, relief. Fine. Fine. Damien looked genuinely confused. You're just going to accept that? What choice do I have? You've already decided. Emily pulled off her apron, folded it neatly. I'll finish the shift. You can't afford to be short-staffed tonight. But after that, I'm done. You won't find another job in this city. I'll make sure of it. Maybe. Emily met his eyes. But at least I'll be able to sleep at night. She left the office before he could respond, before the reality of what she'd just done could fully sink in. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. Sandra took over table 1 with obvious triumph, but Adrian barely acknowledged her. The Patterson group ordered extravagantly and drank even more extravagantly. Someone sent compliments to the chef about the innovative fusion soup. Marco took all the credit, naturally. Emily worked mechanically, clearing tables, refilling water glasses, pretending everything was normal, while her mind raced ahead to unemployment and unpaid care home bills and the impossibility of starting over at 30. At 11:47 p.m., she changed out of her uniform in the staff room for the last time. At 11:53, she walked out to find Adrian Cole waiting exactly where he said he'd be. He looked up from his phone. Ready? Mr. Cole, I need to tell you something. Adrian. What? Call me Adrian. Mr. Cole was my father, and he's been dead for 5 years. Adrian, Emily corrected. I just got fired. He showed no surprise. Because of me? Because of my choices. But yes, you were involved. Adrian stood up, slipped his phone into his pocket. Then I owe you more than dinner. Come on. Where? To see your grandmother, like we planned. I thought maybe after hearing about the job you'd eat. Emily. He looked at her directly. I don't care about your job situation. Well, I do, but that's a problem for tomorrow. Tonight, I need to see the woman who saved my life. Everything else is details. And somehow, standing there in the dying light of the Velvet Crown's entrance, Emily believed him. They walked out into the rain together, and Emily didn't look back. Behind them, through the restaurant's windows, Sandra and Damien watched with identical expressions of disbelief.
Neither of them saw the small smile on Chef Marco's face, or the way Marcus pumped his fist in solidarity. The night was just beginning, and everything had already changed. Adrian's car was exactly what Emily expected: sleek, black, expensive enough that she was afraid to touch anything. The interior smelled like leather and some subtle cologne that probably cost more than her weekly paycheck. Used to cost more than her weekly paycheck, she corrected herself, since she no longer had a paycheck. The driver, an older man with kind eyes and silver hair, held the door open for her. "This is James," Adrian said, sliding in beside her. "He's been with me for 8 years and has heard every stupid thing I've ever said, so don't worry about shocking him." "Ma'am," James nodded politely before closing the door. Emily sat rigidly in the plush seat, hyper-aware of how out of place she was. Her work clothes, black slacks and a white button-down that had seen better days, felt shabby against the car's pristine interior. "Relax," Adrian said. "It's just a car. It's a Bentley. It's transportation." He pulled out his phone, started typing something. "What's the address for Oakwood?" Emily recited it from memory. She'd made the trip enough times that she could probably drive there blindfolded. "James, you get that?" "Yes, sir." The car pulled smoothly into traffic. They drove in silence for several minutes. Emily watched London slide past the tinted windows, streets she'd walked 1,000 times looking suddenly unfamiliar from inside this cocoon of wealth. "Tell me about her," Adrian said finally. "Your grandmother, what's she like now?" Emily considered lying, painting a prettier picture. But something about the way he'd eaten that soup, like every bite mattered, made her want to be honest. "Most days she doesn't know who I am. She thinks I'm her daughter sometimes." "My mother." Emily's throat tightened. "Who died when I was 12. I'm sorry." "Don't be. You didn't know." She traced a pattern on her knee with one finger. "Other days she's completely lucid, sharp as ever. Those are harder somehow, because she knows what's happening to her, knows what she's losing." "How long has she been sick?" "Diagnosed 3 years ago. But looking back, the signs were there earlier. Forgotten appointments, repeated stories, once she left the stove on all night." Emily's laugh was hollow. "I thought she was just getting old. Wasn't paying attention. By the time I realized something was really wrong. It wasn't your fault." "Feels like it was." Adrian shifted in his seat. "My daughter, Sophie, she's 7. Sometimes I'm convinced every decision I make is the wrong one. That I'm failing her in ways I won't understand until it's too late to fix." Emily looked at him properly for the first time since getting in the car. "You have a daughter? Hard to believe, right? That someone like me could be responsible for a tiny human." His expression softened in a way it hadn't all evening. "Her mother died when she was 2, cancer. Very fast, very brutal. One day we were planning Sophie's 3rd birthday party, and 6 months later I was a widower with a toddler who kept asking when Mama was coming home." "I'm sorry," Emily said quietly. "Don't be. You didn't know." He echoed her words back with the ghost of a smile. "Sophie's with my housekeeper tonight, Mrs. Chen. She's more of a mother to Sophie than I am most days." "I doubt that. You'd be surprised. I'm not very good at this." He gestured vaguely. "The emotional parts. The bedtime stories and the scraped knees and the questions about why the sky is blue. I can negotiate billion-pound deals without breaking a sweat, but my daughter asks me to braid her hair, and I panic." Emily found herself smiling despite everything. "Does she look like you?" "Unfortunately for her, yes. Dark hair, serious face, too serious for 7. Adrian pulled out his phone, showed Emily a photo. The little girl in the picture had Adrian's sharp features softened by youth, her dark hair pulled into uneven pigtails. She wasn't smiling, just staring at the camera with the same intense focus her father had. "She's beautiful. She's stubborn. Brilliant and stubborn, and completely unimpressed by anything I've accomplished." Adrian's voice held genuine affection. "Last week I closed a deal that made the front page of the Financial Times. Sophie's response was to ask if I could finally learn to make proper pancakes. Can you?" "I burn water." He slipped the phone back into his pocket. "Which is why Mrs. Chen earns her considerable salary." The car had left central London behind, heading into the quieter suburbs where the care home sat like a well-maintained secret. Emily felt her stomach tighten as familiar landmarks slid past.
I should warn you, she said. My grandmother might not remember you, and if she does, she might not react the way you're hoping. I'm not hoping for anything specific. I just need to see her. Why? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Because I've spent 24 years building an empire, accumulating wealth and power and influence, and none of it means anything compared to what that woman did for me when I was 8 years old and dying in a gutter. You weren't dying. Emily, I weighed maybe 50 pounds. Hadn't eaten a real meal in weeks. Had pneumonia that I was trying to treat by sleeping in warm doorways. His voice went flat. Without your grandmother, I would have been dead before my 9th birthday. That's not hyperbole. That's fact. Emily didn't know what to say to that. The care home appeared through the rain-streaked windows. A converted Victorian house trying hard to look cheerful and almost succeeding. Lights glowed warmly in the windows. Someone had planted flowers along the walkway, though the rain had beaten them into submission. James pulled up to the entrance. Shall I wait, sir? Please. Emily led Adrian through the front doors into a lobby that smelled like industrial cleaner and something floral that didn't quite mask the underlying scent of age and illness. The night nurse, Teresa, who Emily had known for 2 years, looked up from her desk with surprise. Emily, wasn't expecting you tonight. I know. Sorry to drop by so late. Is she awake? Was about 20 minutes ago, arguing with Mr. Patterson about whether the Queen had visited today. Teresa's smile was gentle. You know how she gets. I do. Emily gestured to Adrian. This is a friend. He knew my grandmother a long time ago in China. Teresa's professional warmth kicked in immediately. Of course, room 24, same as always. Take your time. They walked down a corridor lined with watercolor paintings, the kind of aggressively cheerful art meant to make people feel better about leaving their loved ones in places like this. Emily had seen these paintings so many times she'd stopped actually looking at them. How often do you visit? Adrian asked. 3-4 times a week. More when I can afford the cab fare. Emily stopped outside room 24. Sometimes she's excited to see me. Sometimes she screams that there's a stranger in her room. You never know which version you're getting. And you still come. She's all I have. Emily's hand hovered over the door handle. Are you ready? Adrian straightened his shoulders, and Emily saw him transform into someone harder, more controlled, preparing for battle or disappointment or both. Ready. Emily opened the door. The room was small but clean, decorated with photographs Emily had brought from her grandmother's old apartment. May Carter sat in a chair by the window, wrapped in a cardigan despite the room's warmth. She was smaller than Emily remembered from childhood. Age and illness had winnowed her down to bird bones and papery skin, but her eyes were sharp tonight. Emily. May's face brightened. You came. Of course I came, Nai. Emily crossed the room, kissed her grandmother's forehead. I brought someone to see you. May's gaze shifted to Adrian, still standing in the doorway. She studied him with the intensity of someone trying to place a face from a photograph taken decades ago. I know you, she said finally in Mandarin. Adrian took a step forward, then another. When he spoke, his voice was rough. I'm not sure you do. It's been a very long time. The orange boy, May smiled. Always stealing oranges from Mr. Wang's cart. Adrian's composure cracked. He dropped to his knees beside May's chair so suddenly that Emily startled. You remember, he said, still in Mandarin. Of course I remember. You think I forget every hungry child? May reached out with a trembling hand, touched Adrian's face. You were so thin, so angry at the world. I was. And now look at you, all grown up. Expensive suit. Her fingers traced his jawline, but still the same sad eyes. Adrian's breath hitched. Emily watched, frozen, as this powerful man came completely undone in front of her grandmother. I never got to thank you, he said. You saved my life, and I never got to thank you. You don't thank someone for being human. May's smile was gentle. You were a child. I had food. It's simple. It wasn't simple. Everyone else walked past me like I was garbage. But you, I saw a boy who needed soup. May patted his cheek. Don't make it bigger than it was. But it was bigger, Emily thought. It was everything. Adrian pulled back slightly, wiping at his eyes with the back of his hand in a gesture so unguarded that Emily had to look away, feeling like she was intruding on something intensely private. Your granddaughter made me soup tonight, Adrian said. Just like yours. Exactly like yours. May's gaze shifted to Emily. You made him soup? I used your recipe, Nai. The one with the pickled vegetables? And hand-pulled noodles. Good girl. May settled back in her chair, looking satisfied. That soup fixed everything. Broken hearts, bad days. Hunger, Adrian finished. I remember. They sat like that for a while. The three of them connected by recipes and memories and the strange mathematics of kindness given without expectation of return. Then May's expression shifted, became confused. Who are you again? The lucidity was already fading. Just someone you helped once, Adrian said gently. A long time ago. I help a lot of people. May looked at Emily. Who is this man? Is he bothering you? No, Nai. He's a friend. You should have more friends. You work too much. May's attention drifted to the window, to the rain streaking down the glass. It's raining. The tourists won't come in the rain. There are no tourists here, Nai. Of course there are. They come for the gardens. May's voice had gone distant. Beautiful gardens. I should start cooking. They'll be hungry. Emily had seen this transition before, the way her grandmother's mind slipped between present and past without warning. It hurt every single time. Adrian stood slowly, carefully, like someone backing away from something fragile. We should let you rest, Emily said to her grandmother. Rest? I have too much work. The soup needs... May stopped, looked at Emily with sudden focus. Your mother would be proud of you. Do you know that? Emily's throat closed up. I hope so. She would. My beautiful daughter. Gone too soon. May's eyes filled with tears. Everyone leaves too soon. Not everyone, Nai. I'm still here. For now. May reached for Emily's hand. But one day you'll leave too. Find someone who makes you happy. Have babies. Forget about your old grandmother. I could never forget you. Everyone forgets eventually. It's the natural way of things. May's grip tightened. But you remember this? You have your mother's heart. Too kind for your own good. Don't let the world make you hard. I won't. Promise me. I promise. May seemed satisfied with that. Her eyes were already drooping, exhaustion pulling her toward sleep. Emily settled her grandmother into bed, tucking the blankets around her thin frame the way she'd done countless times before. By the time she kissed May's forehead, the old woman was already drifting off, murmuring something in Chinese that Emily couldn't quite catch. Out in the corridor, Adrian leaned against the wall with his eyes closed. He looked completely drained, like someone who'd just survived something traumatic. Are you okay? Emily asked. I don't know. He opened his eyes. I thought seeing her again would give me closure or peace or something. Instead, I just feel lost. Yeah? He pushed off from the wall. Lost. They walked back to the lobby in silence. Teresa looked up from her paperwork, gave Emily a knowing smile. She had a good night, very sharp. She did. Emily paused. Teresa, I need to talk to you about next month's payment. The nurse's expression shifted to professional sympathy. Emily, I lost my job tonight. I don't know when I'll be able to pay. I just need a little time to figure things out. You know I can't make those decisions. You'll have to talk to administration. I know. I just wanted to give you a heads up. Teresa glanced at Adrian, then back to Emily. Talk to Mrs. Morrison in the morning. She's more understanding than most people think. It was a kindness, this warning. Emily appreciated it even as she felt the weight of another problem settling on her shoulders. Outside, the rain had intensified. James appeared with an umbrella before either of them could get soaked, shepherding them back to the car with practiced efficiency. Once inside, Adrian didn't tell James where to go. They just sat there, engine idling, rain drumming on the roof. How much do you owe? Adrian asked finally. Emily's spine stiffened. I wasn't telling you that to get money. I know, but how much? It's none of your business. Emily, no. She turned to face him. You don't get to swoop in and throw money at this like it's one of your business problems to solve. This is my life, my grandmother, my responsibility. I'm not trying to solve anything. I'm asking a question. A question that comes with a checkbook attached. Adrian's jaw tightened. Would that be so terrible? Letting someone help? Yes. Emily's voice cracked. Because then I'd owe you. and I've spent my entire life trying not to owe anyone anything. You wouldn't owe me. I'd owe you. Your grandmother saved my life. That was 30 years ago. So what? There's a statute of limitations on gratitude? Emily wanted to scream or cry, or possibly both. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. She took a breath, trying to organize thoughts that felt too big and messy for words. When my mother died, I was 12. My father had left before I was born. It was just me and Nai. And everyone, social workers, teachers, random strangers, they all wanted to help. They all had opinions about what should happen to me, foster care or distant relatives or charity programs. Emily's hands clenched into fists. Nai fought them all, refused to let anyone take me, worked 2 jobs to keep us together, and she never asked anyone for help, never accepted charity, because she said the moment you owe someone, they own you. That's not always true. It was true for her. She'd seen it in China, people helping with strings attached, favors that turned into debts that turned into obligations. Emily met his eyes. So she taught me to stand on my own feet, to never need anyone. And how's that working out? The blunt question caught her off guard. What? You're 30 years old, just lost your job, can't pay your grandmother's care bills, and you're so determined to not need anyone that you'd rather drown than grab a life preserver. Adrian's voice was gentle, despite the harsh words. That's not strength, Emily. That's stubbornness. Easy for you to say. You have money. I have money now. I grew up in a gutter eating scraps and stealing fruit. He leaned forward. You know the difference between me and the other kids I survived with? The ones who didn't make it? Emily shook her head. I learned to accept help when it was offered. Your grandmother's soup. My adopted father's kindness. Every mentor and teacher and random person who saw something in me worth investing in. Adrian's expression was serious. Pride is expensive, Emily. Sometimes it costs more than you can afford to pay. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was wrong, that she could handle this alone, that she didn't need anyone's help. But sitting there in his expensive car, exhausted and unemployed and terrified about what came next, she couldn't make the words come out. I'm not offering charity, Adrian said quietly. I'm offering to pay a debt I've owed for 24 years. Let me cover your grandmother's care. Not as a favor to you, as payment for what she did for me. That's not how it works. Says who? Says, Emily stopped. I don't know. It just doesn't. Make it work. Adrian pulled out his phone. What's the care home's billing department? Adrian, Emily, I'm going to do this whether you agree or not. You can either tell me the number or I can call tomorrow and handle it directly with administration. Your choice. It should have felt like defeat. Instead, it felt like something inside her chest was loosening, making it easier to breathe. I hate you right now, she said. I can live with that. Emily gave him the number, watched him type it into his phone with quick, efficient movements. I'll call first thing tomorrow, he said. Set up an account. Make sure everything's current. Thank you. The words felt strange in her mouth, too small for what he was offering. Don't thank me. Adrian looked out at the rain. James, take us to my house. Sir? You heard me? Emily's exhaustion-fogged brain took a moment to process. Wait, what? It's almost 1 a.m. You're not going back to whatever depressing flat you live in to stare at the ceiling worrying about money. Adrian's tone left no room for argument. You're coming to my house. We're having tea or whiskey or whatever people drink when they've had the kind of night we just had. And then you're sleeping in one of my 8 guest rooms because I have them and you need one. That's inappropriate. So is a lot of what happened tonight. We're past worrying about appropriate. Emily knew she should refuse. Should insist on going home, maintaining boundaries, keeping this strange connection from becoming something too complicated. Instead, she said, I don't have anything to sleep in. Sophie has a drawer full of clothes she's outgrown. Mrs. Chen hoards them for some reason. Adrian looked at her. Is that a yes? It was a terrible idea, absolutely terrible. Yes, Emily heard herself say. Adrian's house wasn't a house. It was an estate trying to pass as a residence, all glass and steel and architectural statements wrapped around what had probably once been a traditional London townhouse. James pulled through gates that opened automatically, parked in a circular driveway that could have fit 10 cars. This is insane, Emily said. It's practical. Adrian climbed out.
Lots of security. Good school district for Sophie, close to my office.
It's a fortress. That too. Inside was somehow both austere and comfortable. Expensive furniture that actually looked used, toys scattered near a staircase, family photos on surfaces that probably cost more than Emily's annual rent. An older Chinese woman appeared from what must have been the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. "Mr. Cole, I wasn't expecting you back tonight. Change of plans. Mrs. Chen, this is Emily Carter. She'll be staying in one of the guest rooms."
Mrs. Chen's expression didn't shift, but Emily saw the woman's eyes take in every detail. The cheap work clothes, the exhaustion, the way Emily held herself like someone expecting to be asked to leave. "Of course. I'll prepare the blue room." Mrs. Chen paused. "Miss Sophie is sleeping, but she woke earlier asking for you." Adrian's face softened immediately. "Is she okay?" "Bad dream. Nothing serious. She went back to sleep after I promised you'd check on her in the morning. I'll look in on her now." "Sir, it's late. I won't wake her. I just need to see her." Adrian turned to Emily. "Make yourself comfortable. Mrs. Chen will get you settled." He disappeared up the stairs, leaving Emily alone with the housekeeper. "Tea?" Mrs. Chen asked. "You don't have to." "I was making some for myself anyway." The woman's tone suggested this was non-negotiable. "Come."
Emily followed her into a kitchen that looked like something from an interior design magazine. All marble and stainless steel and appliances that probably required instruction manuals. Mrs. Chen put a kettle on, pulled out 2 mugs. "You knew Mr. Cole's grandmother?" "My grandmother knew him when he was young, in China."
"Ah." Mrs. Chen nodded like this explained everything.
"He doesn't talk about China, about before."
"No?"
"Never. I've worked here for 3 years. He's never mentioned where he came from, only where he's going." Mrs. Chen poured hot water over tea bags. "But tonight, he comes home with you, and he looks different." "Different how?" "Less alone." The words hung in the air between them. "I'm not," Emily started. "We're not."
"I know." Mrs. Chen handed her a mug. "But he needs friends, real friends. People who know him as more than just Mr. Cole the billionaire." She smiled slightly. "My granddaughter works in his office. Says everyone's terrified of him, but Sophie loves him. Children know truth." "He seems like a good father." "He tries very hard. Sometimes too hard." Mrs. Chen sipped her tea. His wife's death broke something in him. He built walls to protect Sophie, but walls keep out good things too.
Emily wasn't sure what to say to that. Footsteps on the stairs announced Adrian's return. He'd removed his jacket and tie, rolled up his sleeves, looked somehow younger and more tired at the same time. "She's fine," he said, though no one had asked. "Sleeping with approximately 15 stuffed animals." Mrs. Chen smiled. "I'll show Miss Carter to her room." "Wait." Adrian looked at Emily. "We need to talk about tomorrow. Tomorrow I start looking for a new job. Or you could work for me." Emily nearly dropped her tea mug. "What?" "I need someone who speaks fluent Mandarin, understands food culture, and isn't afraid to speak their mind." Adrian leaned against the counter. "You need a job. Seems straightforward." "Doing what, exactly?" "I'm opening a restaurant. Well, buying one and converting it. The Velvet Crown, actually. Damien doesn't know yet, but I made the offer to the owners tonight. They accepted."
Emily's brain stuttered. "You bought the restaurant?" "Technically, I'm buying it. Deal closes in 48 hours. Adrian shrugged. "I need a manager who understands the vision. Someone who can bridge cultures, work with difficult chefs, and make people feel welcome instead of intimidated." "I'm a waitress." "You're someone who made me feel understood in a room full of strangers. That's rarer than you think." "Adrian, I don't have any management experience." "So? I'll teach you. Or hire people who can teach you. Whatever works." He pulled out his phone again. "Salary would be $60,000 to start, with performance bonuses, full benefits, flexible schedule so you can visit your grandmother." The number made Emily's head spin. "That's insane." "That's market rate for someone with your language skills and cultural knowledge. I served soup. You connected with me in a way no one has in years. You got me to talk about my past, visit your grandmother, make impulsive business decisions." Adrian's smile was slight. "If that's not management material, I don't know what is."
Mrs. Chen was watching this exchange with barely concealed amusement. I need to think about it, Emily said. Take all the time you need. You have until morning. Adrian's tone suggested he was joking, but Emily wasn't entirely sure. Mrs. Chen, can you, already done, sir. The blue room is ready. Emily followed the housekeeper upstairs that were probably individually worth more than her entire flat. The blue room was actually suite, bedroom, bathroom, and sitting area decorated in shades of navy and cream that managed to feel both expensive and comfortable. There are clothes in the dresser, toiletries in the bathroom. If you need anything, press the button by the bed. Mrs. Chen paused in the doorway. He's a good man. Lonely, but good. We're not. I know. Mrs. Chen's smile was knowing. Get some sleep, Miss Carter. Alone in the room, Emily sat on the edge of the bed and tried to process the previous 6 hours. Fired. Defended by a billionaire. Visited her grandmother. Been offered a job that paid more than she'd ever imagined earning. Her phone buzzed, a text from a number she didn't recognize. Sleep well. We'll talk in the morning. Adrian. Another buzz. A second message. And Emily? Thank you. For tonight. For the soup. For introducing me to your grandmother. For all of it. Emily stared at the messages until her vision blurred. Then she did something she hadn't done in months. She cried. Not sad tears exactly. Not happy ones either. Just the release of pressure that had been building for so long she'd forgotten what it felt like to not carry it. When she finally crawled into the unfamiliar bed, wrapped in borrowed clothes that smelled like expensive detergent, she fell asleep almost immediately. For the first time in years, she didn't dream about bills or care homes or impossible choices. She dreamed about soup and gardens and a little boy stealing oranges while an old woman smiled and pretended not to notice. Emily woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains and the disorienting certainty that she'd overslept for a shift at a job she no longer had. Her heart was already racing before her brain caught up with reality. The blue room, Adrian's house, the previous night's impossible sequence of events. Her phone said 7:23 a.m. She'd slept for maybe 5 hours, but it was the deepest sleep she'd had in months. Someone knocked softly on the door. Miss Carter? Mrs. Chen's voice. Breakfast is ready when you are. No rush. Emily found clothes laid out on the chair, simple black pants and a soft gray sweater that looked new and probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. A note in neat handwriting. These should fit. Keep them. LCLC. Mrs. Chen. Emily showered in a bathroom with water pressure that felt like a religious experience, dressed in the borrowed clothes that fit suspiciously well, and made her way downstairs following the smell of coffee and something baking. The kitchen was full of morning chaos. Adrian sat at the island in dress pants and a partially buttoned shirt, wrestling with his daughter's hair while she squirmed and complained. Mrs. Chen stood at the stove, flipping what looked like pancakes, while simultaneously packing a lunchbox. It hurts, Sophie whined. I'm barely touching you, Adrian said, though his hands were clearly tangled in her dark hair. You're pulling. I'm trying not to pull. You're bad at this. I'm aware. Adrian noticed Emily hovering in the doorway. Help. It wasn't a request from a billionaire. It was a plea from a desperate father. Emily crossed to them, gently took the hairbrush from Adrian's hand. May I? Sophie twisted to look at her with Adrian's same intense stare. Who are you? Emily, I'm a friend of your father's. We don't have friends over for breakfast. Sophie's tone was suspicious but not unkind. Daddy doesn't have friends. Sophie, Adrian's voice held a warning. It's true. You said so yourself. You said business associates aren't the same as friends. Adrian looked like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him. Emily bit back a smile and started working on Sophie's hair with practiced movements, the same way she used to help the younger girls at the group home she'd briefly stayed in after her mother died. Your daddy's right, Emily said, but sometimes you meet new people who become friends. That's what happened last night. Did you have a sleepover? Sophie, Adrian started. Sort of, Emily said. It was very late, and your daddy was kind enough to let me stay in one of your guest rooms. The blue one? That's the best one. It has the biggest bathtub. Sophie relaxed slightly as Emily's gentle brushing untangled the knots. Can you do braids?
I can. Daddy can't. He tries, but they always fall out. Braids are tricky, Emily agreed, sectioning Sophie's hair. Takes practice. She wove the dark strands into two neat French braids while Adrian watched with an expression somewhere between relief and something else Emily couldn't quite identify. There. Emily tied off the ends with the elastics Sophie handed her. All done. Sophie ran to a mirror, examined her reflection critically. These are good braids. I'm glad you approve. Can you teach Daddy how to do them? Sophie, Emily's not here to give me hair tutorials, Adrian said. Why not? You need them. Sophie returned to the table, climbed into her chair. Mrs. Chen, can Emily stay for pancakes? Already setting a place. Mrs. Chen slid a plate in front of Emily before she could protest. Breakfast was surreal. Emily sat in a kitchen that probably cost more than most people's houses, eating pancakes with a billionaire and his precocious daughter, while the housekeeper refilled coffee and provided running commentary on everything from Sophie's math homework to Adrian's inability to remember to eat lunch. You have a meeting at 9, Mrs. Chen reminded Adrian. Cancelled it. You can't cancel on Mr. Patterson. I can, and I did. Rescheduled for next week. Adrian glanced at Emily. I have more important things to handle today. Emily's stomach flipped, though whether from nerves or something else, she couldn't tell. Sophie monopolized the conversation, asking Emily questions with the relentless curiosity of a 7-year-old who decided someone was interesting. Where did she live? Did she have pets? Could she speak other languages? Had she ever been to China? I haven't, Emily admitted. But my grandmother told me stories about it, about the gardens in Suzhou and the bridges and the food. Daddy was born there. Sophie took a huge bite of pancake, but he doesn't remember it. I remember some things, Adrian said quietly. Like what? Like, Adrian's eyes met Emily's across the table. Like how the best soup in the world tasted. Something in his tone made Sophie stop asking questions and just eat, which seemed like a small miracle. After breakfast, Mrs. Chen whisked Sophie away to get ready for school, leaving Emily and Adrian alone in the kitchen. I meant what I said last night, Adrian said without preamble. About the job. I know. And? Emily wrapped both hands around her coffee mug. I don't understand why you're doing this. Any of this. The care home bills, the job offer, letting me stay here. We're strangers. Are we? Adrian leaned against the counter. My first memory of kindness came from your grandmother. You made me remember what it felt like to be human instead of just a machine making money. That doesn't feel like strangers to me. It's been less than 12 hours. Some decisions don't need time. They just need to be right. He refilled his own coffee. The restaurant deal closes tomorrow afternoon. I need someone to help me rebuild it from the ground up. Someone who understands that food is about connection, not just consumption. That's you. You barely know me. I know enough. You're loyal. You visit your grandmother multiple times a week, even when it's hard. You're brave. You spoke up last night when you knew it could cost you everything. You're talented. That soup was perfect. And you're honest, which is rarer than you'd think in my world. Adrian set down his mug. So yes, I'm offering you a job. And yes, I'm being pushy about it. Because I'm good at reading people, Emily. And I'm reading you as someone who needs to be pushed before she'll let herself want something. Emily wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the ways this could go wrong. Instead, she asked, what happened to Damien? Adrian's smile was sharp. Called him this morning, informed him of the ownership change. He's got until end of business today to clear out his office. He'll be furious. He'll be unemployed. There's a difference. Adrian's expression hardened. I don't tolerate people who abuse their power. He created a toxic environment and profited from it. That ends now. And the rest of the staff? Depends. The ones who treated you well keep their jobs. The ones who didn't. He shrugged. We'll see. I'm not running a charity, but I'm also not running a place where people like Sandra feel comfortable making others miserable. Emily thought about Sandra's smug smile, her constant needling, the way she'd tried to sabotage the wine service. She's going to make trouble, Emily said. Let her try. Adrian checked his phone. I have lawyers for that. The casual way he said it reminded Emily exactly who she was dealing with.
Not just the man who'd knelt beside her grandmother's wheelchair, but someone who commanded enough power to buy restaurants on impulse and destroy careers with a phone call. "You're scared of me now." It wasn't a question. "A little," Emily admitted. "Good. You should be. I can be ruthless when I need to be." He looked at her directly. "But not with you. Never with you." "Why not?" "Because your grandmother saved my life, and you brought me back to something I thought I'd lost forever." Adrian's voice went soft. "I don't have many people I trust, Emily. Mostly because I don't let anyone close enough to earn it. But sitting across from you last night, eating that soup, I felt safe. And I can't remember the last time I felt safe with another person." Emily's throat tightened. "That's a lot of pressure to put on someone you just met." "I know. I'm working on my boundaries." His smile was self-deprecating. "My therapist would have a field day with this conversation." "You have a therapist?" "3 of them, actually. One for general anxiety, one who specializes in grief, and one who helps me not screw up Sophie's childhood." Adrian said it matter-of-factly. "Money doesn't fix broken brains, Emily. Just gives you better access to help." The honesty was disarming. "I'll take the job," Emily heard herself say. "On one condition." "Name it." "I want to bring my grandmother's recipes into the restaurant. Not all of them. I know you need French cuisine and molecular whatever. But some of them. A fusion menu that honors where she came from." Adrian's expression shifted into something Emily couldn't read. "You want to build a menu around your grandmother's cooking." "I want to build a menu that matters. Food that tells stories instead of just filling stomachs." Emily's hands were shaking slightly. "Is that stupid?" "That's the best idea I've heard in years." Adrian pulled out his phone, started typing rapidly. "I'm messaging my architect. We'll need to redesign the kitchen, and I'll need you to document every recipe you remember. Can you do that?" "I think so. Some of them I'll need to recreate from memory. Then we'll test them, over and over, until they're perfect." He looked up. "When can you start?" "Now?" "Good. We're going to the restaurant. I want you to see it before we tear it apart." They took Adrian's car again, James driving them through morning traffic while Adrian made phone calls in rapid succession. His lawyer, his architect, someone named David, who apparently managed his restaurant investments. Emily half listened while watching London slide past, still not quite believing this was her life now. The Velvet Crown looked different in daylight. Less glamorous, more tired. The windows needed cleaning. The awning had a tear in it Emily had never noticed during her night shifts. Adrian had a key. Of course he did. Inside, the dining room was empty and somehow sad without people filling it. Emily could see every scuff mark on the floors, every crack in the plaster, every sign of deferred maintenance hidden by dim lighting and expensive wine. "It's worse than I thought," Adrian said. "It has good bones." Emily ran her hand along the bar. "Under all the pretension, there's something real here." "Show me." So she did. Walked him through the space, pointing out things she'd noticed during her year working there. The way natural light came through the east windows in the morning, the corner booth that couples always requested for proposals, the spot near the kitchen where you could hear Chef Marco singing opera when he thought no one was listening. "You loved it here," Adrian said. "Even when they treated you terribly, you loved the space." "I love the potential." Emily stopped in the center of the dining room. "This could be somewhere people come to celebrate, to connect, to remember why food matters." "Then that's what will make it." A noise from the kitchen made them both turn. Damien emerged looking like he hadn't slept, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled and hostile. "You have some nerve showing up here," he said to Emily. "She has every right to be here," Adrian said coldly. "More than you do, actually. You have until 5 p.m. to vacate." "This is my restaurant." "This was never your restaurant. You managed it poorly while abusing staff and cutting corners on everything from ingredients to safety standards." Adrian pulled out his phone, showed Damien the screen. "I had my people run an audit last night. Want to explain the discrepancies in your liquor inventory? Or the payroll irregularities? Or the health code violations you've been bribing inspectors to overlook?" Damien's face went through several colors. "You can't prove any of that." "I can prove all of it. The question is whether I do it quietly or publicly." Adrian's voice was glacial. "Leave peacefully and I'll give you a neutral reference. Make this difficult and I'll make sure you never work in this industry again." Because of her? Damien pointed at Emily. You're destroying my career over a worthless waitress? Adrian moved so fast Emily barely tracked it. One moment he was standing beside her, the next he was in Damien's space, close enough that the manager stumbled backward. Call her that again, Adrian said quietly, and neutral reference becomes the least of your concerns. Damien's bravado crumbled. I need this job. You should have thought about that before you created a hostile work environment. Adrian stepped back. 5 p.m. Don't make me call security. They stood in tense silence until Damien retreated toward his office, his footsteps echoing through the empty restaurant. That was intense, Emily said. That was restrained. Adrian's jaw was still tight. I wanted to do much worse. I noticed. Does that bother you? Emily considered. No, should it? Most people find it unsettling when I get like that. Cold. You weren't cold. You were protective. She looked at him. There's a difference. Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Before he could respond, the front door opened and a woman in an expensive suit walked in carrying a tablet and looking efficient. Mr. Cole, I got your message. Traffic was terrible. She noticed Emily. Hello. Emily Carter, this is Priya Sharma, my director of operations. She makes sure I don't forget important things like eating and sleeping and showing up to board meetings. Adrian gestured between them. Priya, Emily's going to be managing the restaurant rebuild. Priya's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose slightly, but her professionalism never wavered. Wonderful. I'll have HR send over the paperwork. She opened her tablet. I assume you'll want to fast-track this? Yesterday would be good. I'll see what I can do. Priya turned to Emily. Do you have time this afternoon to come by the office? We'll need to get you set up in our systems, discuss salary and benefits, that sort of thing. Emily's head was spinning. Sure. Yes. What time? 2 p.m. work for you? It works? Perfect. I'll send you the address. Priya made a note on her tablet. Mr. Cole, the Patterson meeting has been rescheduled for Tuesday at 10, and your daughter's school called. Apparently she forgot her lunch. Adrian checked his watch. I can drop it off. I already sent a car service with a replacement. Mrs. Chen packed extras this morning. Of course she did. Adrian looked genuinely relieved. What would I do without you? Starve and miss meetings. Priya's smile was warm. I'll leave you to it. Emily, see you at 2. She left as efficiently as she'd arrived. She's terrifying, Emily said. She's brilliant. Pays attention to details I'd never notice. Adrian pulled out his phone again. Speaking of which, your grandmother's care. I spoke with Oakwood administration this morning. Set up an account covering the next 3 years. They're expecting you to call and confirm some medical details. 3 years? Emily's knees went weak. That's too much. That's what I can afford. Easily. Adrian pocketed his phone. And before you argue, remember, this isn't charity. It's payment for services rendered 30 years ago with interest. That's not how debt works. It's how my debt works. His expression softened. Let me do this, Emily. Please. The please got her. This man who could buy restaurants on impulse and destroy careers with a phone call was asking permission to help her grandmother. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Yes. Thank you. Adrian nodded once, looking satisfied. Good. Now, let's talk about the restaurant redesign. I want your input on everything. Layout, kitchen equipment, dining room aesthetic. This is your vision as much as mine. They spent the next 2 hours walking through the space while Adrian made notes, and Emily suggested changes that grew bolder as she realized he was actually listening. Knock down the wall between the kitchen and dining room. Replace the heavy curtains with something that let in natural light. Rip out the pretentious wine cellar and turn it into a prep kitchen for hand-pulled noodles. You want an open kitchen? Adrian asked. I want people to see where their food comes from. No secrets, no hidden things. Just honest cooking. Emily gestured to the space. Your story started with my grandmother's noodle stall in China. This restaurant should feel like that. Elevated, yes, but still connected to something real. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, studying her in that intense way he had. What? Emily asked. Nothing. Just, you get it. Most people in this industry, they're chasing stars or status or Instagram followers, but you understand what actually matters.
Food and connection. Food and connection, he agreed. A crash from the kitchen made them both jump. They found Chef Marco standing amid broken plates, his face red with fury. Out! He shouted when he saw Adrian. This is my kitchen! Was your kitchen? Adrian corrected calmly. As of tomorrow afternoon, it's my kitchen. And you're fired. Marco's rage reached new heights. He launched into a tirade mixing Italian and English, gesturing wildly while his voice echoed off the stainless steel surfaces. Adrian waited until he ran out of steam. Are you finished? Adrian asked. You cannot do this. I'm an artist. This restaurant would be nothing without me. This restaurant would be better without you. Your ego is bigger than your talent. You treat your staff terribly. And frankly, your molecular gastronomy is dated. Adrian's tone was conversational, which somehow made it more devastating. I'm offering you 2 months severance and a neutral reference. Take it or leave it. I'll sue! You'll lose. Your contract has a termination clause that I'm exercising. My lawyers are very thorough. Adrian pulled out his phone. 2 months severance or nothing. Decide now. Marco deflated like a punctured tire. 2 months. Smart choice. Priya will send the paperwork. Adrian turned to leave, then paused. And Marco, that soup Emily made last night, that was art. What you do is just expensive ingredients arranged prettily on a plate. Learn the difference. They left Marco standing in the wreckage of his kingdom. Outside, Emily took a deep breath of cool London air. You're really good at destroying people's lives, she said. Only when they deserve it. Adrian checked his watch. You have 3 hours before your meeting with Priya. Want to get lunch? With you? Unless you have other plans. Emily thought about her empty flat, her non-existent schedule, the strange new reality she'd fallen into. I don't have other plans. Good. Adrian texted James. I know a place, small, quiet, makes the best dumplings in London. How do you know about good dumplings? You're a billionaire. Billionaires eat too, Emily. We just usually eat boring things at boring restaurants with boring people. His smile was slight. But sometimes we get lucky and meet someone who reminds us there's more to life than business deals. The dumpling place was in Chinatown, tucked between a pharmacy and a shop selling tea sets. 8 tables, fluorescent lighting, laminated menus with pictures. Nothing like the Velvet Crown. Emily loved it immediately. They ordered too much food and ate it with chopsticks while Adrian told her stories about Sophie, her strange obsessions with dinosaurs, and her refusal to eat anything green and her determination to learn Mandarin because Daddy was born there and I should know his language. She sounds amazing, Emily said. She's exhausting. Adrian's voice was full of affection. Last week she decided we needed to adopt every stray cat in London. I came home to find her trying to coax a feral Tom into a cardboard box using fish fingers. Did it work? The cat fled. Sophie cried for an hour. I ended up donating a ridiculous amount of money to a cat shelter to make her feel better. You're soft. Only for her. Adrian dipped a dumpling in sauce. She's all I have left of Rebecca, my wife. Sometimes I look at Sophie and see her mother's smile or hear her mother's laugh, and it's like being stabbed and hugged at the same time. Emily understood that feeling. My grandmother's voice sometimes comes out of my mouth. Same phrases, same tone. It's comforting and terrifying. Terrifying how? Because it means I'm turning into her. And as much as I love her, watching her mind slip away, Emily's throat tightened. I'm scared that's my future too. Dementia isn't always genetic. I know, but the fear doesn't care about statistics. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the kind of quiet that felt natural rather than awkward. Can I ask you something? Emily said finally. Anything. Why did you really buy the restaurant? It can't just be about my grandmother or the soup or wanting to help me. Adrian set down his chopsticks, considering. When I was building my company, I convinced myself that success meant accumulation. Money, properties, influence. That if I just acquired enough, I'd finally feel secure. He looked at his hands. But it's never enough. There's always another deal, another zero to add to the account, another competitor to crush. And somewhere along the way, I forgot why I was doing any of it. What changed? Sophie. Rebecca's death. He paused. And then last night, tasting your grandmother's soup, I remembered being 8 years old and actually happy.
Not successful or secure or powerful, just happy. Because someone fed me without wanting anything in return. Emily waited. I want to build something that matters, Adrian continued. Not just another investment property or another line on a balance sheet. Something that makes people feel the way I felt last night. Connected. Seen. Human. He met her eyes. That's why I bought the restaurant. And that's why I need you to help me build it right. The weight of his trust settled over Emily like a blanket, warm and heavy and slightly suffocating. I'm going to disappoint you, she said. I've never managed anything. I'll make mistakes. Good. That means you're trying. Adrian pulled out his wallet, left cash on the table. Perfect people are boring, Emily. I want someone real. They walked back through Chinatown toward where James had the car waiting. The afternoon sun cut between buildings, making the wet pavement shine. What if this doesn't work? Emily asked. The restaurant. What if we fail? Then we fail. Adrian's voice was certain. But we'll fail trying to build something meaningful instead of succeeding at something meaningless. I'll take that trade. Emily's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Heard you're working for Adrian Cole now. Good luck. You'll need it. Sandra. She showed Adrian the message. Want me to have her fired? He asked casually. Can you do that? I own the restaurant where she works, so yes, Emily considered. The old version of herself, the one who'd existed just 24 hours ago, would have said no. Would have taken the high road, turned the other cheek, been the bigger person. The new version, standing in Chinatown with a billionaire who'd just offered to fire her enemy, felt different. Yes, she said. Fire her. Adrian made a phone call. It took less than 3 minutes. Done, he said, pocketing his phone. That easy? That easy. He looked at her. How do you feel? Emily searched her conscience for guilt and found only satisfaction. Good. I feel good. Then it was the right choice. Adrian started walking again. Sometimes kindness means protecting people. Sometimes it means cutting out the ones who hurt them. Learning which is which, that's the hard part. They reached the car. Before Emily could climb in, Adrian caught her arm gently. Thank you, he said. For what? For saying yes. To all of it. The job, the restaurant, putting up with my intensity. His smile was small, but genuine. I know this is strange and fast and probably overwhelming, but I meant what I said earlier. You make me feel safe, and that's rare enough to fight for. Emily's heart did something complicated in her chest. You barely know me. I know enough. He released her arm. Now get in. Priya will kill me if you're late to your meeting. The office was everything Emily expected. Glass and steel and people in expensive suits moving with purpose. Priya met her in the lobby, guided her through security, and spent the next 90 minutes walking her through contracts and benefits packages and information that made Emily's head spin. Questions? Priya asked when they were done. Is he always like this? Emily gestured vaguely. Making huge decisions on impulse? Define impulse. Priya's smile was knowing. He thinks fast, decides fast, moves fast. But the thinking part is usually solid. He's been successful for a reason. And if I mess this up, you won't. Priya handed her a folder. Everything you need is in here. Building access, company credit card, direct line to me if you need anything. Welcome to the team, Emily. Emily left the office feeling like she'd been hit by a very expensive truck. Her phone rang as she stepped onto the street. Adrian. How'd it go? He asked. I signed my life away to a corporation. My corporation. There's a difference. She could hear the smile in his voice. Listen, I need to handle some things tonight, but tomorrow morning I want you at the restaurant. We're meeting with the architect at 8. That's early. That's construction hours. Get used to it. He paused. And Emily, bring those recipes, the ones from your grandmother. I want to start building the menu. Okay. Oh, and one more thing. Sophie wants to know if you can teach her to make soup this weekend. Emily's heart melted a little. Really? She asked 3 times during dinner. Apparently braids and cooking lessons make you the coolest person Daddy knows. Adrian's voice went soft. You don't have to. I know it's above and beyond job requirements. I'd love to, Emily said, and meant it.
Saturday then. Come over around 10. We'll make it a thing. They hung up and Emily stood on the London street watching expensive cars pass and people hurry by with their important lives and felt the strangest sensation. Hope. For the first time in years, she felt like maybe things were going to be okay. Her phone rang again. The care home. Miss Carter, this is Teresa. Your grandmother had a good day today, very sharp. She asked about you. What did she say? She said you'd found someone worth knowing, said she could always tell when you were happy, even from far away. Teresa's voice was warm. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Emily looked up at the sky, blinking against sudden tears. I will, she promised. Tell her I'll visit tomorrow. I will. And Miss Carter, that account Mr. Cole set up. I've never seen anything like it. Your grandmother is set for as long as she needs. I know. You're very lucky. Emily thought about soup and braids and second chances. Yeah, she said quietly. I really am. The next 3 weeks blurred together in a chaos of construction dust, recipe testing, and learning to navigate Adrian's world. Emily showed up at the restaurant every morning at 7:30, armed with coffee and her grandmother's recipes scribbled in a worn notebook. The architect, a cheerful woman named Diane, who wore hard hats like fashion statements, had embraced Emily's vision with enthusiasm that bordered on manic. Open kitchen? Yes, Diane had practically shouted during their first meeting. Natural light, intimate spaces, honest materials. This is what restaurants should be, not these cold minimalist boxes everyone's building. The demolition started on a Tuesday. Emily watched workers tear down the wall between kitchen and dining room, exposing brick and beams that hadn't seen daylight in decades. Adrian stood beside her, hands in his pockets, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. Second thoughts? He asked. Constantly. Emily watched another section of wall come down. But mostly about whether I'm qualified to make these decisions. You're the most qualified person I know. You actually care about what we're building. Caring doesn't equal competence. Doesn't exclude it either. Adrian checked his phone. I have to take this. Don't let them touch the bar area until I get back. He walked outside, already talking to whoever was on the other end. Emily turned back to the controlled destruction, trying to see the finished restaurant through the dust and debris. Marcus appeared at her elbow. She'd hired him as kitchen manager after learning he'd been the only person at the Velvet Crown who'd stood up for her when Damien was on his rampage. He'd cried when she offered him the position. The new stove arrives Thursday, he said, consulting his tablet. And I've been interviewing line cooks. Found 3 who understand the fusion concept without trying to make it weird. Define weird. One guy wanted to make fortune cookie ice cream. Marcus's expression was pained. I explained that wasn't the direction we were going. Emily laughed despite herself. Good call. Also your grandmother's noodle recipe? I've been practicing. Want to try my latest attempt? They walked to the temporary kitchen setup in what used to be the wine cellar. Marcus had transformed it into a surprisingly functional workspace, complete with a portable stove and meticulously organized ingredients. He pulled noodles with competent hands. Not as good as Emily, but decent. The technique was right, even if the execution needed work. Better, Emily said, tasting the result. The dough needs more rest time, though, and you're stretching too fast. Let the gluten relax between pulls. See, this is why I need you here. YouTube videos only teach so much. Marcus made a note. Can you show me again tomorrow? Every day until you get it right. That's what I like about you, boss. You're patient. Boss. The title still felt foreign. Adrian returned looking frustrated. Patterson wants to move our meeting up. I told him no. Why? Emily asked. I can handle things here. Because Saturday is soup day with Sophie, and I'm not missing that. Adrian's jaw was set. Patterson can wait. Something warm bloomed in Emily's chest at the casual way he prioritized his daughter. And her. How is Sophie? She'd seen the little girl twice since that first breakfast. Brief encounters when Adrian brought her by the restaurant after school. Sophie had declared the construction super cool and asked if she could wear a hard hat. Excited about Saturday, won't stop talking about learning to make noodles. Adrian smiled slightly. Fair warning, she's going to ask you a million questions. I can handle questions. These are 7-year-old questions, like why is soup wet, and can we make rainbow noodles, and do I have a boyfriend? Emily choked on air. What?
She asked me last night if you were my girlfriend. Apparently Mrs. Chen mentioned you're around a lot. Adrian looked embarrassed. I told her we're friends and business partners. She asked what the difference was between a friend and a girlfriend. That conversation spiraled into territory I wasn't prepared for.
What did you say?
That it's complicated and she should ask me again when she's 30. He ran a hand through his hair. Parenting is just making things up as you go and hoping you don't cause too much therapy later. Emily thought about her own childhood, the group homes, the social workers, the well-meaning adults who'd tried to explain why her mother wasn't coming back. You're doing fine, she said. Sophie knows she's loved. That's what matters. You sound certain.
I am. I've seen you with her. The way you dropped everything to deliver her lunch, how you carry extra hair ties in your pocket, that you know she likes her sandwiches cut diagonally. Emily met his eyes. Those aren't things you do if you're failing. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Thank you. For what? For seeing that. Most people just see the billionaire who throws money at problems. Most people are idiots. His laugh was genuine and surprised. Remind me to put that on your business cards. The week continued its frantic pace. Emily interviewed potential servers, tested recipes until her kitchen at home smelled permanently of ginger and star anise, and learned to read construction blueprints without her eyes crossing. She visited her grandmother twice, finding May lucid one day and lost the next. The consistency of Adrian's care payments meant Emily could focus on the visits themselves rather than panicking about bills. Thursday brought the new stove, a massive commercial range that took 6 men to install. Emily stood watching, mentally calculating cooking times and burner configurations. It's beautiful, Marcus said reverently. It's a stove. It's a 6-burner jade range with a griddle top and dual ovens. That's like the Bentley of stoves. Emily thought about Adrian's actual Bentley sitting in the parking lot. He has a type. Rich people always do. But at least he bought us the good stuff. Marcus ran his hand along the stainless steel. Some owners would have gone cheap on equipment and expensive on decor. Cole did the opposite. It was true. Adrian had approved every equipment request without question while pushing back on decorative elements that seemed frivolous. The restaurant was shaping up to be functional first, beautiful second. He gets it, Emily said. Gets what? That the food matters more than the Instagram background. Marcus grinned. You two are kind of perfect for each other. The business partnership, I mean, he added quickly. Not like, romantically. Not that there'd be anything wrong with that. I'm going to stop talking now. Emily's face heated. Good plan. But Marcus's words stuck with her through the afternoon. She and Adrian did work well together, his big-picture vision balancing her detail-oriented execution, his confidence supporting her moments of doubt. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm of communication, often finishing each other's sentences or solving problems in tandem without needing long explanations. It felt natural in a way Emily hadn't experienced before. Friday evening, Adrian found her in what would eventually be the noodle prep kitchen, practicing pulls for the 100th time. You're still here, he said. Wanted to get this right before I teach Sophie tomorrow. It looks right to me. The texture's off, too elastic in the middle, not enough on the ends. Emily stretched the dough again, frowning at the result. My grandmother could do this in her sleep. I'm struggling like an amateur. You're being too hard on yourself. I'm being realistic. If we're putting this on the menu, it needs to be perfect. Adrian crossed to her workspace, examining the noodles with surprising focus. What did your grandmother do differently? I don't know. That's the problem. I watched her 1,000 times, but I never asked about technique. Just copied what I saw. Emily's frustration leaked into her voice. And now she can't explain it even if I ask. So we figure it out. Adrian pulled out his phone. I'm texting Priya. She knows a master noodle chef in Hong Kong. We'll fly him here for a consultation. Adrian, that's necessary. This is important to you, which makes it important to the restaurant. He finished typing. He'll be here Tuesday if he's available. Emily wanted to argue about the extravagance, the unnecessary expense, the fact that Adrian kept solving her problems with money and connections. Instead, she said, Thank you. Stop thanking me. We're partners. He pocketed his phone. Now go home and sleep. Tomorrow's going to be chaos. Sophie's 7. How chaotic can it be? Adrian's smile was knowing. You have no idea.
Saturday morning arrived with unseasonable sunshine and Emily's nerves jangling like alarm bells. She showed up at Adrian's house at exactly 10 a.m., carrying bags of ingredients and her grandmother's recipe notebook. Mrs. Chen opened the door before Emily could knock. "Miss Sophie has been awake since 6, the housekeeper said. "She's eaten breakfast, changed clothes 3 times, and rearranged the kitchen twice. You're walking into a tornado." Good to know. The kitchen was indeed chaotic. Sophie had apparently decided cooking required costumes. She wore a chef's hat that was comically oversized and an apron that dragged on the floor. The counter was covered in bowls and spoons and what looked like every measuring cup in the house. "Emily!" Sophie's face lit up. "I'm ready to make soup." Adrian stood near the coffee maker looking simultaneously exhausted and amused. He dressed down, jeans and a simple navy sweater that made him look younger, more approachable. "She's been ready for 3 hours," he said. "I'm going to need a nap after this." "You can't nap, Daddy. You have to help." Sophie pointed imperiously at the counter. "Mrs. Chen said you're in charge of chopping." "I'm terrible at chopping." "Then you'll learn. That's what Emily says. Everyone can learn if they try." Adrian shot Emily a look that said, "See what you've started?" Emily bit back a smile and set down her bags. "Okay, team, first rule of cooking, clean workspace. Sophie, can you help me clear some of this?" They spent the next 20 minutes organizing, with Sophie providing running commentary on every item and its importance. The measuring cups were crucial for precision. The wooden spoon was lucky because Grandma Chen gave it to me. The ceramic bowl with the chip was special because Mommy used to make cookies in it. Adrian's expression went soft and pained at that last one. Emily caught his eye, silently asking if this was okay. He nodded. They started with this broth, the foundation of everything. Emily walked Sophie through selecting vegetables, explaining why certain combinations worked while others didn't. "But why can't we use carrots?" Sophie asked. "We can, but in this soup we want clear, clean flavors. Carrots are sweet and would change the whole balance." "What about green beans? I hate green beans." "Good news. No green beans in this recipe. I like you more and more." Sophie attacked a piece of ginger with a vegetable peeler, her tongue poking out in concentration. "Daddy, are you watching? This is how you peel ginger." Adrian was indeed watching, his phone forgotten on the counter. "I see that." "You need to practice. Emily says practice makes better." "Not perfect?" Adrian asked. "Perfect is boring." Sophie repeated Emily's words from earlier in the week with absolute conviction. "Better is more interesting." Emily's heart did something complicated. Hearing her own philosophy repeated by this serious little girl in an oversized chef's hat felt surreal and wonderful. They moved through the recipe slowly, Emily adjusting her teaching for Sophie's age and attention span. When the little girl got bored with stirring, they switched to noodle pulling. When she grew frustrated with the technique, they took a break for cookies that Mrs. Chen had thoughtfully prepared. Adrian participated with surprising enthusiasm, his expensive watch getting dusted with flour as he attempted, and mostly failed, to stretch dough the way Emily demonstrated. "This is impossible," he declared after his third broken noodle. "You're forcing it. Let the dough do the work." Emily moved behind him, guiding his hands through the motion. Gentle pressure, consistent rhythm, like this. She was acutely aware of how close they were standing, the warmth of his back against her front, the way his breathing changed slightly when her hands covered his. "Like this?" His voice was rougher than normal. "Exactly like that." The dough stretched properly, forming long, even strands. "I did it!" Adrian sounded genuinely excited. "You did!" Emily stepped back, suddenly flustered. "See? Just needed practice." Sophie watched this exchange with the unnerving focus of a child who noticed everything. "Are you dating?" she asked casually. Emily nearly dropped the bowl she was holding. "Sophie," Adrian's voice held a warning. "What?" "Mrs. Chen says when people stand that close and look at each other like that, they're usually dating." "Mrs. Chen needs to stop gossiping with 7-year-olds, Adrian said. She wasn't gossiping, she was observing. Sophie pulled her noodles with surprising competence. "I observe things too. You smile more when Emily's around, and you check your phone less. And yesterday you hummed while making coffee." "I did not hum." "You totally did. Mrs. Chen and I both heard it." Adrian looked mortally embarrassed.
Emily focused very hard on stirring broth.
Emily and I are friends, Adrian said carefully, and business partners. Sometimes adults can be close without dating.
But do you want to date her? Sophie, it's okay if you do. Mommy would want you to be happy. Sophie's voice went matter-of-fact in that way children had when discussing devastating things. She told me before she died. She said you'd be sad for a long time, but eventually you'd find someone who made you smile again. And Emily makes you smile.
The kitchen went very quiet. Adrian's face cycled through several emotions: grief, love, pain, something that might have been hope. Your mother was very wise, he said finally, his voice thick. I know. That's why I listen to her even though she's gone. Sophie turned to Emily. Do you like my daddy? Emily's throat was tight. I do. Very much. Good. He needs someone to like him besides me and Mrs. Chen. He gets lonely. Sophie, that's enough, Adrian said gently. But it's true.
I know, but some things are private. Sophie considered this, then shrugged. Okay, can we put the noodles in now? I want to taste them. The moment passed, but the weight of it lingered. They finished the soup together, Sophie chattering about school and friends, and a boy named Timothy who tried to kiss her at recess. I kicked him and got sent to the principal's office, but it was worth it.
When the soup was finally ready, they sat at the kitchen island, all three of them plus Mrs. Chen, who'd been commandeered by Sophie, and tasted their creation. Sophie took a careful slurp, her face serious. Then she broke into the biggest smile Emily had seen from her. It's perfect. Not perfect, Emily corrected, but pretty good for a first try. It tastes like the soup you made Daddy at the restaurant, the one that made him cry. I didn't cry, Adrian protested. You totally did. Your eyes got all wet, and you did that thing where you pretend to cough, but you're actually hiding feelings. Adrian looked at Emily helplessly. She's perceptive, Emily said. She's terrifying. I'm right here, Sophie pointed out. And I'm not terrifying. I'm observant. There's a difference. They ate soup and talked about everything and nothing. Sophie's upcoming science project, Mrs. Chen's plans to visit her daughter in Manchester, Adrian's ongoing battle with a competitor who kept trying to poach his best architect. Emily felt something she hadn't experienced in years: belonging. This wasn't her family, wasn't her kitchen, wasn't her life. But sitting here eating soup she'd taught a 7-year-old to make while her father watched with soft eyes, and their housekeeper offered gentle commentary, Emily felt like maybe she could belong somewhere. The feeling was terrifying and wonderful in equal measure. After lunch, Sophie insisted on showing Emily her room, an explosion of books and art supplies and dinosaur figurines that somehow made perfect sense. This is my favorite, Sophie said, holding up a stuffed triceratops. Mommy gave it to me for my 5th birthday. It's very cool. Do you have a favorite stuffed animal? I did. A rabbit my grandmother made me when I was little. I called him Mr. Ears. What happened to him? Lost him when we moved after my mother died. I was 12. Never found him again. Sophie's face went solemn. That's really sad. It was. But I still remember him, so in a way he's not really lost. That's a good way to think about it. Sophie set down the triceratops carefully. I think about my mommy like that. She's gone, but I remember her, so she's still kind of here. Emily's eyes stung. Exactly like that. They sat on Sophie's bed for a while, talking about loss and memory and the strange mathematics of grief. Emily was struck by how mature this little girl was, how she'd been forced to understand death and absence at an age when most kids only worried about homework and playground politics. Downstairs, Adrian was loading the dishwasher when Emily returned. Where's Sophie? He asked. Organizing her rock collection. Apparently she's preparing for the science project. That'll keep her busy for hours. Adrian closed the dishwasher. Thank you for today. This meant a lot to her. It meant a lot to me too. Adrian leaned against the counter, studying her. She asked you about Rebecca. She did. I hope that's okay. More than okay. She doesn't talk about her mother with most people. Too worried about making them uncomfortable. His smile was sad. But she trusts you. I lost my mother young too. Maybe she senses that. Maybe? Adrian was quiet for a moment. What Sophie said earlier, about me being lonely, about you making me smile. I know that was awkward. Adrian, you don't have to. Let me finish. He took a breath.
She's not wrong. I have been lonely for years. I convinced myself it was fine, that I had Sophie and work, and that was enough. But then you showed up and made me soup, and suddenly I remembered what it felt like to connect with someone. Emily's heart was hammering. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't know. I'm saying this is complicated and we work together and you have every right to tell me to back off. Adrian ran a hand through his hair. I'm saying that when you stood behind me helping with the noodles today, I forgot to breathe. And when Sophie asked if we were dating, part of me wanted to say yes, even though we're not, because maybe I want us to be. The confession hung between them. Emily's mind raced through 1,000 responses, practical objections, emotional fears, all the reasons this was a terrible idea. What came out was, I want that too. Adrian's expression shifted from nervous to something else entirely. Yeah? Yeah. Even though it's complicated and we work together and I have no idea what I'm doing. We'll figure it out, together. That's a terrible plan. All my best plans are terrible. Adrian pushed off from the counter, crossed the space between them. Is this okay? He was close enough that Emily could see gold flecks in his dark eyes, count the faint lines at their corners. This is okay, she whispered. Adrian kissed her like he did everything else, with complete focus and intensity that made the rest of the world disappear. His hands cupped her face gently, reverently, like she was something precious he was afraid to break. Emily's hands found his shoulders, steadying herself against the dizzying rush of feeling. When they finally broke apart, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. I'm going to do this wrong, he said quietly. I'm going to work too much and forget important things and be awkward about feelings. Rebecca used to joke that I approached emotions like business negotiations. I'm going to overthink everything and panic about being good enough and probably try to run away at least twice. Emily's laugh was shaky. We're both disasters, matching disasters. Is that a good foundation for a relationship? Better than pretending to be perfect. Adrian pulled back slightly. We take this slow. We're honest when it's hard. We protect Sophie above everything else. And the restaurant? We keep it professional at work. No one needs to know unless we decide we want them to. His thumb traced her cheekbone. Sound okay? Sounds terrifying. Good terrifying or bad terrifying? Emily thought about soup and braids and the way Sophie had smiled when the noodles came out right. Thought about Adrian's hand shaking as he ate her grandmother's recipe. The way he'd knelt beside May's wheelchair. How he'd defended Emily without hesitation. Good terrifying, she decided. Adrian kissed her again, softer this time, sweeter. Daddy! Emily! Come look at my rocks! They broke apart, slightly flustered. We're coming, Adrian called back. Then, quieter, this stays between us for now? Definitely. They found Sophie in the living room with what appeared to be every rock she'd ever collected spread across the floor in elaborate patterns. It's a geological timeline, she announced proudly. See, these are sedimentary, these are igneous, and these are metamorphic. I learned the words from a book. Adrian and Emily spent the next hour being educated on rocks by an enthusiastic 7-year-old who had very strong opinions about quartz versus granite. When it was time for Emily to leave, Sophie hugged her tight. You'll come back, right? The little girl asked. Of course. Promise? I promise. Sophie seemed satisfied with that. Good. We still need to make dumplings, and spring rolls, and that thing you mentioned with the pancakes. Scallion pancakes. Those, we need to make those. Emily left with a list of future cooking projects and a heart that felt dangerously full. The next week brought its own challenges. The noodle master from Hong Kong arrived and spent 3 days teaching Emily techniques her grandmother had done instinctively. The health inspector came and found 2 minor violations that sent Marcus into a panic spiral. The custom tables arrived damaged and had to be sent back. Through it all, Emily and Adrian maintained their careful professional distance at work, while stealing moments alone when they could, coffee in the empty dining room before the crew arrived, late-night texts about menu ideas that turned into conversations about everything else. This is harder than I thought, Emily admitted one evening when they were alone in what would eventually be the wine storage room. Hiding it? All of it. Trying to be professional when I want to kiss you. Worrying about what happens if this doesn't work out. And we've already built this whole restaurant together. Adrian pulled her close. Then we deal with it.
like adults. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it's worth the complication. He kissed her forehead. We're building something good here, Emily. The restaurant, yes. But also this, us. What if I mess it up? What if you don't? Emily let herself lean into him, breathing in his scent, coffee and expensive cologne and sawdust from the construction. Priya knows, she said suddenly. What? About us. She hasn't said anything, but she knows. Gives me this look whenever you're around. Adrian groaned. She's terrifyingly perceptive. Should we tell people? Make it official? Do you want to? Emily considered. Not yet. Let's get the restaurant open first, one big life change at a time. Practical. One of us has to be. They stood like that for a while, wrapped together in the dusty future wine room, until Marcus's voice calling for Emily broke the moment. The restaurant's opening date loomed closer. 3 weeks away, then 2, then suddenly just days. Emily barely slept, running through checklists and contingency plans and worst-case scenarios. Adrian matched her hour for hour, handling the business side while she perfected the operational details. Sophie came by after school most days, doing homework at table 6 while Emily trained servers. The little girl had become the unofficial restaurant mascot, charming construction workers and offering unsolicited opinions on everything from napkin colors to the height of the bar stools. People will want to spin on these, she declared after testing one. You should bolt them down. We should bolt them down, Emily told Marcus. Mrs. Chen stopped by with food, making sure both Emily and Adrian remembered to eat. She never commented on their relationship directly, but Emily caught her smiling when she thought no one was looking. 5 days before opening, Emily's grandmother had one of her sharp days. Emily brought Adrian and Sophie to visit, watching nervously as May studied Adrian with clear eyes. The orange boy, May said in Mandarin, all grown up and stealing my granddaughter. Adrian laughed, responding in the same language. Not stealing, borrowing with permission. You take care of her, she works too hard. I know, I'm working on that. May turned to Sophie. And who is this serious little person? I'm Sophie, I'm 7. Emily taught me to make soup. Did she do it right? She did it perfect. Good, May smiled. Emily knows soup, her mother knew soup, I knew soup, it's in the blood. They visited for an hour, May fading in and out of clarity but mostly present. When it was time to leave, she gripped Emily's hand. He's a good one, she said in English. Better than most. Don't let fear make you stupid. I won't, Nai. Promise me. I promise. In the car afterwards, Sophie fell asleep against Emily's shoulder while Adrian drove through evening traffic. She liked you, Emily said quietly. I liked her. She's still in there, still fierce. For now, Adrian's hand found hers squeezed gently. For now is all we ever get. Opening night arrived with terrifying speed. The restaurant, rechristened the Lantern Bridge at Emily's suggestion, looked nothing like its previous incarnation. Light poured through tall windows. The open kitchen gleamed. Tables and chairs in warm wood created intimate spaces without feeling cramped. Emily stood in the center of the dining room at 5 a.m., taking it all in. Having second thoughts? Adrian appeared beside her with 2 cups of coffee. Constant thoughts. Does that count? Probably. He handed her a cup. We're ready, though. You've trained the staff perfectly. The kitchen's running like clockwork. Marcus has everything organized down to the last garnish. What if people hate it? Then they hate it and we adjust. Adrian's voice was calm. But they won't. You've built something special. We built something special. Fine. We built something special. He clinched his coffee cup against hers. To partnership. To partnership. They opened the doors at 6 p.m. to a full reservation book and a line of walk-ins that wrapped around the block. The first hour was controlled chaos. Orders flew, the kitchen hummed, servers navigated the dining room with practiced grace. Emily moved through it all, making tiny adjustments, solving small crises, ensuring everything ran smoothly. At table 12, an elderly couple ordered the Suzhou-style fish soup. Emily watched from the kitchen as they took their first bites. The woman's eyes filled with tears. Just like my mother used to make, she said to her husband. Exactly like it. Emily felt her own throat tighten.
Adrian found her during a rare, quiet moment, pulled her aside. "You did it," he said. "We did it. Stop correcting me." He kissed her quickly, not caring who saw. "You did this. You took your grandmother's legacy and turned it into something people will remember." Adrian, Emily, look around. Look at these people eating food you created in a space you designed, having experiences you made possible. His eyes were intense. "You did this. Own it." So she did. She looked around at the full dining room, listened to the sounds of conversation and laughter and contentment, watched servers deliver dishes that carried pieces of her grandmother's memory into the world, watched Sophie at the host stand. She'd begged to help, and Adrian had relented, carefully checking reservations with serious concentration. Watched Marcus in the kitchen, pulling noodles with the technique Emily had taught him, pride and joy written across his face. And she felt something she hadn't felt in years, pride in herself. Not just gratitude for help received or relief at avoiding disaster, actual pride in what she'd accomplished. The night continued in a blur of service and small victories. By the time they closed at 11, Emily was exhausted and exhilarated in equal measure. The staff gathered for a quick celebration, champagne in mismatched glasses, toasting their survival and success. "To Emily!" Marcus raised his glass. "For having a vision and making us believe in it." "To Adrian," someone else called. "For buying the damn place." "To all of us," Emily said, "for working our asses off and pulling this together." They drank and laughed and slowly filtered out until it was just Emily, Adrian, and Sophie, who'd fallen asleep on a banquette around 9 and been allowed to stay. Adrian carried his daughter to the car while Emily did a final walkthrough, turning off lights and making sure everything was secure. Outside, the city was quiet. The sign above the door, the lantern bridge and elegant script, glowed softly against the dark. Adrian returned, finding Emily standing on the sidewalk staring up at it. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That I can't believe this is real, that any of this is real." "It's real." He wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "We're real." "Are we telling people now? About us? Do you want to?" Emily thought about it, about hiding and protecting and all the careful distance they'd maintained. "Yes," she decided. "I want people to know." "Then they'll know." Adrian kissed the top of her head. "Tomorrow. Tonight, let's just be tired and proud and relieved we didn't burn the place down." That's a low bar. "I'm feeling generous." They stood there for a while, watching occasional cars pass, breathing in the cool night air. "My grandmother would have loved this," Emily said quietly. "She does love it, in the ways that matter." "How do you figure?" "Because part of her lives in every dish we serve. Every soup, every noodle, every recipe you remember." Adrian's voice was gentle. "People think legacy is about monuments or money, but it's really about the parts of ourselves we pass on, the things we teach, the kindness we show. Your grandmother's legacy is feeding people, and you're carrying that forward." Emily leaned into him, letting the weight of the day settle into her bones. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing something in me worth investing in, for taking a chance on a waitress who made you soup." "Emily," Adrian turned her to face him, "you're not a waitress I took a chance on. You're my partner, in business and in life. And the only risk I took was thinking you might say no." He kissed her there on the sidewalk in front of their restaurant, and Emily kissed him back with all the hope and fear and possibility she'd been carrying for weeks. When they finally pulled apart, Sophie's voice drifted from the car. "Finally! I've been waiting forever for you two to figure it out." They both jumped. "You're supposed to be asleep," Adrian called. "I was fake sleeping. Mrs. Chen taught me how." Sophie's grin was visible even in the dim light. "Does this mean Emily's your girlfriend now?" Adrian looked at Emily. "What do you think?" "I think," Emily said carefully, "that we're together, if that's okay with you, Sophie." "Obviously it's okay. I've been planning this for weeks." Sophie settled back into her seat. "Can we go home now? I'm actually tired." They drove through London's quiet streets, Sophie dozing for real this time, Emily's hand in Adrian's on the center console. "This is going to be complicated," Emily said. "Everything worth having is complicated." "Very philosophical. I'm exhausted. Philosophy happens when I'm exhausted." Emily laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. The restaurant was open. Her grandmother was cared for.
She had a job she loved and a man who saw her clearly and chose her anyway. It wasn't perfect, but it was real and messy and hers. And for the first time in her life, that felt like enough.